With Ayaka currently on banner and Skirk coming right after, now is the perfect time to get a really strong Cryo DPS if you've been desiring one. But the thing is, you already own a really strong Cryo DPS, and his name is Kaeya. That's right, in today's video, I'm going to show how you can unbench your Kaeya and quite possibly turn him into one of the best DPS on your account, to the point where you'll have no need to ever pull another Cryo DPS if you build and play him right. Let's get started. Alright, so as we know, Escoffier came out this patch with one of the strongest supportive kits we've ever seen, elevating pretty much every Cryo DPS up a tier or two. Kaeya is one such DPS that seems to have slipped under everyone's radar. Despite being a free 4-star, Kaeya has pretty good multipliers on his skill and burst, with his burst getting substantially stronger with his C2 and C6. So with the team core of Escoffier and Farina, he can do legitimately good damage. His skill also makes extra particles if it triggers freeze or hits already frozen enemies. They'll usually cast it 2 to 3 times per rotation, making him a really good cryo battery, thus allowing Escoffier and your third cryo unit to run very little energy recharge. And for that third cryo unit, the one that I've been using is Chongyun. Here, Chongyun allows Kaeya's normal and charged attacks to deal cryo damage, which is really nice because they have surprisingly high multipliers, so he'll do solid damage from them alongside his skill and burst. Chongyun also does some damage of his own. It's not super high, but enough to be noticeable and worth building him properly. Chongyun deals his damage all at once as well with his burst, so that can make him effective at finishing off a wave of weakened or low HP enemies, or quickly weakening them for someone else to finish off. This strength of his will become much more noticeable as you invest more into the team via things like his Escoffier C1 and Farina constellations to increase his damage. I've personally gotten him to hit up to about 250k total damage on his burst. Chongyun also provides 15% cooldown reduction on his skill. This makes it much easier for Kaeya to use his skill 3 times per rotation without extending the rotation. Chongyun's skill will usually be cast right before swapping to Kaeya, so no one else really gets their cooldowns reduced, but you can use it instead at the start of the rotation so everyone benefits. You'll have much less cryo infusion uptime on Kaeya if you do this, but you'll get a shorter rotation, so there's a lot of room for rotational flexibility that can allow the team to adapt to different enemy scenarios. The final good thing about Chongyun here is, as a claymore, he can buff with Wolf's Gravestone. Historically, this weapon has not been very good due to the buff condition making it unreliable to trigger, and the 30-second cooldown making the uptime terrible. However, with recent Abyss lineups, there's usually waves of enemies even on burst chambers, so the team's flexible rotations allow you to easily just swap to Chongyun when an enemy's HP is low enough, and attack on him to get the buff. You'll likely only have it in the first rotation, but it makes a pretty big impact on that rotation. But overall, this is a surprisingly strong team. Much to my surprise, my fastest top half clear of this Abyss came from this team, and it's the only team I was able to do this Abyss in under 100 seconds with. Looking at the math, the team comes in at about 84,000 DPS, which is lower than all the 5-star Cryo DPS. However, these numbers are if you aren't able to trigger Kaeya's C2 at all. If you're able to kill 3 enemies for the full burst extension, the team skyrockets up to 100,000 DPS, putting it a bit above Wriothesley and Ganyu, but still below Ayaka and Skirk. If you kill 1 or 2 enemies, then it's around the same DPS as Wriothesley and Ganyu, so this is still a very good team for using 2 4-star units that were likely collecting dust on your account before. Also, Chongyun isn't actually the best 4th slot for this team. That's Shenhe. She's superior here thanks to buffing both Kaeya and Escoffier at the same time, while being able to easily use her skill twice per rotation. You won't have cryo infusion on Kaeya anymore, but should still do some normal and charged attacks as there's nothing else to fill the time with anyway. The multipliers are solid, so the physical attacks will still do noticeable damage. Not a lot, but enough to still be worth doing. Overall, should you have Shenhe and use her over Chongyun, the team jumps to 93,000 DPS, which is Wriothesley and Ganyu level. That's again before factoring in Kaeya's C2. Getting that full C2 burst extension will take the team up to an incredible 110,000 DPS, putting it at Ayaka levels of DPS, and that's pretty insane when you remember that Ayaka is one of the best DPS in the game right now. With that said, there is a pretty big elephant in the room. Kaeya is a starter character with notoriously rare constellations, as he's only available in the shop about twice per year. and the only other way to get him is through having great luck on Standard Banner or Mondstadt Chronicled Wish, which has only ever existed once so far. Veteran players who have been playing for years like myself should have him C6 by now, but newer players aren't so fortunate. So how important is it to have Kaeya's constellations? His strongest ones are C6, C2, and C5 in that order. These constellations give him a lot more damage. Going from C0 to C6 can double his damage depending on how many times his C2 procs, so having these constellations definitely makes a big impact. However, even without having all of them, the team is pretty darn respectable for a free DPS. With Shenhe, it's still over 80,000 DPS even with a C0 Kaeya, and if he's C2 getting the full burst extension, then it's still over 90,000. If using Chongyun, then the team is about 74,000 DPS with a C0 Kaeya, which is certainly not great by today's standards, but it's not bad either, and still pretty respectable considering it's using two low-demand 4-star units. It will only get stronger and stronger over time as you pick up more Kaeya constellations. If you get him to C2 and are able to get its full value, then the team will be over 80,000 DPS. Now that we understand how the team works and its strengths, let's go over how to build Kaeya. For the weapons, this is another strength of the team. Kaeya is an attack scaling sword unit, so he has access to Finale of the Deep as a great free option, with the best 5-star options being only about 8% stronger. The team has a lot of sub DPS damage, so the overall team increase by putting a 5-star sword on Kaeya isn't that big, and you can save more Primo Gems by just sticking with Finale. But if you already have some of these weapons to put on him, or still just want to get him a 5-star weapon anyway, then you'll want something with crit damage like Mist Splitter or Absolution. Crit rate weapons are not good since you already have plenty from Resonance in your artifact set. And for that artifact set, 4-piece Blizzard is best as long as the enemies can be frozen, but if you know you'll be facing enemies immune to freeze, you may want to use Meira Shusei Hunter instead. If using Hunter, just keep in mind that Kaeya's burst snapshots, so you'll want to be careful and ensure that he actually has all 3 stacks of this set before casting his burst. His skill has a small heal, so that will help him get a stack to help with that. And for the main stats, just use the traditional attack damage crit. The numbers shown here are with Chongyun. If you're using Shenhe, the damage percent goblet and crit circlet will be even more important. And then lastly, for energy requirements, Kaeya doesn't need to build any at all. Not only is this a triple cryo team, but he refunds 15 energy to himself after using his burst if he's C6. Even without that energy refund from C6, Kaeya ascends with energy recharge and has 127% by default, so you still won't need to build any from your artifacts. And that's pretty much all you need to know. Overall, I would say that Escoffier has turned Kaeya into something akin to a cryo jungling. With Pyro DPS, you never truly need to pull a 5-star because if you have C4 jungling, you already have a properly strong enough Pyro DPS, even if 5-star options would be a lot stronger. That's basically where Kaeya stands now. As long as you have Escoffier and Farina, he is strong enough to be your main cryo DPS, reaching legitimately very strong levels of DPS if you have his constellations or in a scenario where his C2 activates. Of course, he doesn't have that same team flexibility that Zhongling has since this requires 2 limited 5-stars, so he's not quite the same as her, but it's fine. I do just wish that Hoyovus would make it much faster to get his constellations. There's no reason why the starter characters shouldn't be permanently available in the shop, with no limit to how many times you can buy them at once if you have sufficient glitter. But that's all I have to say. If you liked today's video, please be sure to like and subscribe and comment your thoughts down below. Also feel free to join my Discord where you can communicate with me and my community directly. Thanks and goodbye.